you can see the opportunities that this creates. That, yes, I can see in your brain all the opportunities that are now happening of everything that we've talked about for the last 50 minutes or hour, that all these things can now open up that one extra place that was that one extra obstacle that was keeping blind or disabled people from being a part of being at a table where a lot of decisions are being made. This feels like a victory.
Disinformation is spreading.
There will be a surprise outbreak. Is the issue of pandemic.
No social distancing at all.
They said that they would express their concerns about the mask supply.
Where's the mask? Where's the glove?
A second wave is...
We all need some good news.
A message for all the healthcare workers out there.
Thank you.
If you're looking for hope tonight, raise your hand. If you feel alone and don't understand, if you're fighting the fight of your life, then stand.
From Santa Rosa, California, this is 19 Stories. I'm Cheryl Halling. Cheryl's sitting in front of a microphone in a home-based studio with red padded walls, a loosely crafted script, and staring at the monitor on her desk, which has the recording software she'll be using to record a podcast episode with her guest, Roy Samuelson. She breathes, presses the record button, and begins their conversation. And so ends a very rudimentary example of what audio description is. Whereas for over 2 decades, my guest, Roy Samuelson, has gained critical praise working extensively in the ever-growing area of audio description, to which he's received 2 SOVAS Award nominations in 2019 and 2021 in the narration and audio description categories. Audio description, or AD, is an invaluable tool that allows access to television programs, movies, and other visual media to blind and low vision audiences. As the founder of the Audio Description Network Alliance, ADNA, Roy is a catalyst for quality and excellence in audio description through the inclusion of blind professionals in every aspect of audio description. He advocates for all aspects of AD to be in parity to a sighted audience. He's also the host and producer of the ADNA podcast, where he interviews and highlights the many talents and roles that are essential in making AD possible. Roy's deep, soulful, and commanding vocal skills have garnered him incredible success behind the microphone, contributing to thousands of vocal promos on KCRW, NPR's radio station in Santa Monica, California. In addition to providing voice matches for top Hollywood stars in numerous television and film projects. Commercially, Roy has voiced in teletags for the Super Bowl, the Academy Awards, major brands such as State Farm, Ford, and Target, and for the past 13 years has been the owner of the Good Loop Group, which provides casting services for TV and feature film ADR and looping. Cheryl now welcomes Roy Samuelson to the microphone and to 19 Stories.
Oh, wow. That was great audio description. Out the gate, Cheryl. Did you have help with that? Did you do that yourself?
Yes.
It's so funny. Like I was, experiencing it and knowing that this is a podcast, I actually felt invited along. The 19 Stories, you're telling stories. That's the whole focus of your podcast. And you brought me in. And it's so funny because, people are going to split hairs on She Takes a Breath. But here's the thing. It works because we didn't know that you were taking a breath because we didn't hear it until later. There was a different breath that you took, but you were saying you were taking a breath anyway. So I just want to say that is what was going through my brain. And then who is this guy that you're talking about? Did he do all that stuff? There's no way. Who? Wait, what? No. Oh my goodness. This is what happens when people Google?
Oh my gosh. No, this is what happens when people look at your life. This is your life, Roy Samuelson.
Drum roll.
So welcome to 19 Stories. How are you today?
Thanks I'm having a great time. Thanks for having me. This has been an exceptional day with a lot of challenges, a lot of opportunities. And I just got to tell you, being here with you, this is a beautiful oasis. And I'm so thrilled to be here. So thank you.
I am so thrilled to have you. So you are very welcome. And whereabouts are you joining us from?
Los Angeles, California. So just a little south of you, right?
Yes, just a little bit, about 400 miles south of us.
It's a quick flight or a long drive, depending on...
Yeah. Well, as a former LA gal, I can appreciate our entire state, which is quite a beautiful and cold one lately.
Yeah, no kidding. Somebody was saying they're like Simpsons clouds. You know the opening of The Simpsons with the blue sky and the puffy white? It's like we've got Simpsons clouds now with all the greenery and the trees. And it's like, oh, it's so nice.
Yes, it is. No complaints. We have been in such a drought and we really, really need this delicious water that's coming down, although it is wreaking havoc in some places. But we will take the good and the bad, and prayerfully people can stay safe in the midst of all of that. So I have a little bit of a bone to pick with you.
Here we go. Let's do it.
Right out of the gate, we're going to go to fisticuffs and have at it.
I am a very win-win guy, so do not expect a zero-sum game with this conversation.
When I had a consultation with you a couple of weeks ago, and I mentioned that I cut my teeth at KCRW, you were so incredibly humble and that you didn't mention a thing about your work with them. And then I read your bio and I'm thinking, what? In all seriousness, I'm in awe with how much you've done with them, and certainly in your humility by not saying anything when we chatted some time ago. So perhaps that's a good place to start. Let's chat about how all your promo VO came about, given your expertise in audio description, or did your promo work come before AD work?
Great question. So let's back up just a little bit and talk about the missed opportunity that I had to join you in Connection, because this is going to come back around, I swear to God. It's so funny that you mentioned that, because when you were saying KCRW, I was thinking in my head, oh my gosh, we both worked at KCRW, but I was so invested in how you were talking about it. And we had so many other things to cover that I got to say it blipped through. It was like a very fast little hummingbird thought that just kind of, and then it was gone. And it is a missed opportunity, because that was a great time for me to share, hey, I've worked at KCRW too. And we could have had so many, maybe we worked with the same people and maybe at the same space, and all those conversations we lost because I didn't risk sharing with you something that I was a part of. There's a fine line between those two, but I wanted to emphasize the connection that was missed there, and I'm sorry for that. However, let's get into the juicy stuff, because KCRW promo has really helped me tremendously. At the time, I was at the Santa Monica College and nondescript building, and there were so many opportunities there on two things. First of all, to learn how to connect with clients and learn the process. I have assumptions as a voice talent, where I've worked so much in isolation. I send auditions. At the time, I was just before I got KCRW. I was doing auditions. I was sending things out. It was hustle game. It was trying to connect and network and doing everything I possibly could to grow my career. And I finally get this opportunity. All those opportunities I imagined in my head, I've got to be on time, which is so important. No question about that. I got to make sure my clothes aren't making noise and making fabric-y stuff. And I got to make sure
and not wearing long earrings.
Exactly. And it's like, all those things are great. And I am not going to discount that at all. However, I brought my own assumptions to that game. They had short turnaround time. They had to get stuff out fast, and they wanted to make sure that people could understand and hear what was being said and delivered. And they wanted someone who knew what to do. So whenever I was assuming what a client wanted, showing up on time, getting things in on time, making sure that I don't wear loud fabric, making sure that, the client was happy, the catering, all these catering, not in the sense of actual food, but, making sure that they had what they wanted. But it was all based on what was inside my head. It didn't have an actual connection to real world experience. So KCRW gave me that real world experience. Every time I went into their location, I had a different experience, whether it was a different person directing me that had different expectations or assumptions, or it was just, we need to get this now, Roy. And you've got 2 minutes and it's got to be in 29.5 seconds and you got it in at 29.6. Can you shave off 0.1 of a second? I'm like, yeah, sure, let's do that. Like all that stuff happens. But there was this other dynamic, I'm going to call it a soft skill, that is learned by experience. And that was the gift that KCRW gave me. The idea that here are these things that I'm assuming a client wants, but the client was the one that was actually telling me what they wanted. And I needed to listen. I needed to let go of my expectations and assumptions and really listen and pay attention to what they wanted in the moment. And that's flow state. That is the thing that is so satisfying, to be able to let go of those expectations and say, what do you need and how can I help deliver? That was such a gift with KCRW. And that comes through with so many other clients that I've worked with.
You know what I love about what you just said? Because people hear NPR station and they think public radio. They don't associate professionalism and all the things that you just mentioned with an NPR station. It's almost a misnomer. But it leads me into my next question, which is, I first became aware of audio description through the work of Media Access Group at WGBH. GBH is a public radio, and it's one of the top stations, television and radio stations in the country. You've worked with them since 2015 as a narrator on motion pictures, primetime network, and streaming series. Would you mind giving us a brief history of how audio description came about through WGBH?
GBH has been involved in audio description for over 30 years. It feels new, particularly to voice talents and other people that are learning about it when they stumble on it accidentally on streaming services, because it's just how we access it now. It's different. But it's been around for close to 30 years, more than 30 years now. And I'd love to steer people to the Audio Description Project. That's the ACB's. Let me see if I can remember the letters. It's ADP for Audio Description Project, adp.acb.org. And there's so much, it's just a wealth of information there. There's current events, there's the history of audio description. So I'd love to steer people that way so we can focus on some other things. But yeah, WGBH has been involved in audio description. They've done a music video for Stevie Wonder about 10, 20 years ago that called What the Fuss. And it's the voice is
It's a great name.
Busta Rhymes. Yeah, it's like, and it's such an experience to be able to hear audio description before a lot of people even knew it was around.
I'm amazed that with all the work you do as a working voice actor, you found the time to form the Audio Description Network Alliance. And at first glance, when I discovered it, it almost looks like an IMDb for those in the field of AD. But as I've touched upon, it actually is so much more than that. And so I'm curious what motivated you to form this alliance.
Sure. It is IMDb for audio description. And it's it's not just, and it's also other things, but for the main purpose, a lot of film and TV has audio description now. Back to the reference to the ADP Audio Description Project, there's, at the time this is coming out, it's probably going to be close to 9,000 TV and film titles. And you can imagine a title has multiple episodes for like all your favorite TV shows. So that number's super high. Audio description is so much more than TV and film. I'm focusing on the TV and film side for the AD&A in this context, but it's so much more. There's museums, there's corporate, there's education. There's so many great things that are happening. Anything that's visual can be included with audio description. So with the AD&A, the Audio Description Network Alliance, I had, this must have been maybe 10 years ago. No, it couldn't have been 10 years ago. It was maybe six-ish years ago. I had uploaded some of my audio description titles to IMDb. And it was a relatively, professional. It looked good, okay, and it was something that I was using to reach out to other companies that create audio description. And at one point, I reached out to one of the major audio description companies, and I shared them my IMDb, and they wrote back and said, "Why are you sending me this?" And I was
really,
I was like, well, it's got all my IMDb credits. And they said, well, you've done some looping and you've done some other voiceover work, and I don't see any AD. And sure enough, IMDb had pulled close to 250 of my IMDb credits with AD. I didn't know, and I wasn't aware. And so I wrote them and I said, dude, what you doing?
What's up with this? Yeah.
And they wrote back and they said, we have a policy that anything that we list has to be included in the visual credits.
Oh my gosh.
And I said, I literally read the visual credits. This is for blind people. These are for blind audiences. And I have all my contracts. I'm happy to share them with you. This is official thing. And after 2 or 3 exchanges, they said, well, we'll have to come back and talk to you. And I asked for a meeting. I asked for a 10-minute meeting to give them a pitch. And IMDb is a big company. There's so many things going on. But at that point, I was so sad. And I said, I can't be the only person that is experiencing this. I can't be the only AD narrator or anyone working in AD that's trying to, show their work and give accountability and credibility and also credit. So I went to a coffee shop and launched a WordPress site. And it was intended to grow the multiple roles of audio description. We'll get into that soon too. But initially it was just narrators, just to reach out to AD narrators and see who was out there. And then the intent was to grow it to other roles, which is where we're at now. But that was a way so other voice talents could show their audio description narration work and give audiences a reference. a lot of audio description companies, through their clients, the people that hire the audio description clients, may or may not allow the credits to be listed. Netflix is an exception. They require not only the production company that does AD, but also the writer and the narrator to be included.
I was just about to ask you, are credits now included for the AD actor?
So it is a asterisk. Certain streaming services include it. Certain streaming services don't. Like I said, Netflix is, I think as of 3 years ago, might be 2 or 3 years ago, sometime during the pandemic, I believe, this is a public website, it's available, that says we require audio description to include the titles. But if Netflix acquires a title, they're not going to hunt down the person and add those credits. So there's a little asterisk there. I believe HBO is pretty good about including the writer as well as the narrator. But, there's more roles than just writer and narrator in AD. There's the placing, that's the sound editing. There's the how loud or soft it is, the AD mix. There's the quality control. There's the director. And, there's also the person that's organizing and putting it all together. Those people usually get 0 hours of sleep a week. So there's all sorts of different roles in audio description. And the AD&A was initially to help platform those roles and let people understand, I really like this narrator. I want to hear them on anything they do. Or Roy Samuelson reminds me of an ex-boyfriend. I can't stand him. Whatever he's doing, I need to avoid. So if he's doing a show, I'm not going to listen to him. What's he doing? So it can work in lots of different ways.
I love that you spoke to the different roles, because it's just like, when you listen to any film or television right now, the levels depending on which network, depending on the show, can be all over the place, because right now audio engineers have to mix for so many different platforms. And I would imagine that's the case with audio engineers who are mixing for audio description as well, because they have to take into the network that they're working with. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I would imagine that is a huge consideration of knowing how they mix their shows when they're using audio description. And I want to step back for a moment and just clarify something. In a communication, you made a point of saying the phrase for the work you do is precisely worded as audio description versus describer. You mentioned to me why the word describer is problematic, and would you mind sharing why that is?
Sure. I'm going to include the AD&A in the sense of we are at the AD&A showcasing the contributions, the craft, the skills, and perspectives of still underrepresented entertainment industry professionals who are serving the AD audience. And that is, I want to frame my answer to you in that context. The term describer, let's go back to public radio. There's an assumption of somebody in a back room with a little CB radio and oversized headphones that's leaning over a folding desk
Yes.
with a little booth and just talking, and they're flipping a lot of switches and whatever. As you know, there's hundreds of people involved, and there's so many decisions that need to be made, and so much equipment, and so many people involved. In audio description, which also used to be called video description or descriptive video, that's all been its own cluster of confusion. Thankfully, the FCC has said, we are calling this audio description, and that's what it is. Some people think, it should be called video description. Well, a lot of people are on YouTube and they see a video, and underneath the video is a description of the video, so that is video description. So I can see both sides here. Anyway, audio description is audio description. Within audio description, it's not just one person that's doing it. So there are multiple roles. We've discussed the voice talent, the quality control, the engineering, the writing, the directing, the placement, the editing, and there's so many more roles. And it's very likely that one person is doing multiple roles. It's very possible that one person could do all roles if they've got a script that came at midnight and it's due by 5 a.m. the next day. You never know. But the important thing is each of these roles is distinct. And where I am... I'm so ramped up about naming the different roles. As clunky as audio description writer is, or audio description narrator, it's a lot of syllables. But what it's doing is educating anyone who's listening that the audio description has multiple roles, and each of those roles can be performed by different people. And here's where it gets really fun. By distinguishing, that gives accountability to others. If I am saying a script line that comes in the audience's perspective a little too soon or too late, It helps audiences know, well, maybe that was just a placement issue, or if there was something that was mistakenly said, that maybe that was something that was done by a missed quality control. By giving roles, I'm not trying to avoid my own responsibility here. There's been shows where it's gone to air where I've mispronounced a word, and we've been able to go back and fix it once we found out about it, but it was still out there for a little bit, So all of this to say, the term describer has also another problem, besides, giving the responsibility to the voice talent and the voice talent only. The other problem is that as more blind professionals who are entering this space, as a blind professional, they may see a describer and think, well, I can't do all the roles. I don't see how that's possible. The funny thing is, blind professionals have worked in every role of audio description, so that's its own moot point. However, imagining one person doing everything, that feels like a really big burden, and it's not a true burden. It is not a burden. It is not an obstacle at all. So by distinguishing these different roles, we can make sure that more blind professionals are included in every aspect of AD. I'm not sure if that's coming through or not. I feel like I'm kind of talking too much, but
absolutely, and it perfectly segues into my next question about walking us through some of the incremental steps that it takes from a production standpoint, the behind-the-scenes efforts by those advocating for AD inclusion in film and television, and how that plays out when approaching content creators to include AD in their projects.
Great question. So right now it is the Wild West in audio description for film and TV. There are so many companies, and each company has their own way of doing it, and that's the only way that they do it. And each company that hires that company has expectations of what each of those companies have. So there's almost like this groove that's been cut as if that is the only way. I've worked with maybe a 10 to a dozen different audio description companies, and each one has varying approaches from the voice talent. So I'm going to give a general view, but it is not the only view. There are many ways to get this work done. Let's start by saying that the difference between a distributor and a producer. In other words, a distributor could be, let's say, a platform like Netflix. That Netflix shares a ton of content. This has got to be a bad example a little bit because Netflix also produces content. So being able to say, here's this film. This film is quote unquote complete. And I'm using air quotes on complete because at the time in this example, it doesn't have audio description.
Okay.
If that film is purchased by a platform, say Netflix or Hulu or HBO or whatever, that platform has found a way to create audio description for that content that has been shared with them before it gets to the audience. So there is a complete separation between the film creators, the producers of the film, and the AD team. In other words, the film gets done and then it gets passed along to a platform, and that platform hires an AD company, creates the audio description, and then shares it with the audience. That's a really unfair and wild generalization. There's a lot of exceptions to it, but you can see where the problem is when audio description is tagged on at the very end. I've worked for shows with the audio description was created for one of my friends' produced shows, and they had no idea that I was voicing it. It's that It's that separate.
Wow.
In some cases. And in other cases, it's not. I'm working on another film where the producer of the film is hands-on with AD, and it's affecting how the producer is creating the film. And it's affecting how we as the AD team are creating the AD. It's a really fascinating, and that's not the first time it's happened. There's other films that have done it. I'm not sure about this scale, but it's been really exciting to see that happen. So let's take the step that whoever hires the AD company usually has a complete film meaning that it's edited. It may have some special effects that haven't been added in yet, but for the most part, it's done. It's even beyond a picture lock, which means there's no pictures moving or changing. There might be some audio changes, but at that point, an audio description company shares that content with an AD writer, and the writer, if they're lucky, also has a shooting script, if they're lucky, or just watches it and collects all the information that's necessary, writes the script, and that is probably one of the hardest jobs I've ever seen in the entertainment industry. Whether the AD writer is blind or sighted, it is such a challenge to be able to concisely capture the intent of the film in such a short amount of words in between lines of dialogue.
It's so interesting when you were describing this, and thank you so much for taking us through that. It almost seems like there's a natural disconnect, whereas if you brought in the writer on set, much in the way you have a script supervisor, so that they are in step with how things are, the groove of the film, if you will, or, of the show, so that they are part of the creative process, not an afterthought. Not saying that AD is an afterthought. It just seems like there's room for a disconnect there. And is that a goal of yours, to see more inclusion on the creative level?
It's happening. There's about 3 years ago, we interviewed a AD writer that worked on a pretty popular series that was actually on set, and they talked about it. So it's not unprecedented. It's not common. But to your point, you can see, for you to even suggest that shows the importance. That shows the importance of that connection and how the vision of the film, not just what it looks like, but the vision of the film, is communicated with the AD team. And vice versa. The AD writer can also communicate with the film itself and say, here's what we need. I know you think we should say these words, but that's not what AD is. So there's definitely a shared back and forth.
We've all heard how difficult it is to get projects green-lighted, meaning a show approved and in production. How difficult is it to get the powers that be, as I say in air quotes, on board with the work that you do? And do you get any pushback from any of the studios or content creators?
I feel like the studios, and this is going to come across as very, very positive. I want to be clear that there's so many places that AD needs to go. We've got so many things to do. But at the same time, I feel like celebrating these small steps are really important. I feel like these companies do have problems. There's definitely places to improve. There's places to grow. There's places to make sure that things can be even better. And I find that as these companies evolve their work, I'm going to kind of contradict myself, what I said earlier about being in a rut of having, here's the way we do it and this is the only way. There's a reason I think they are doing things the way they are. They see that it is beneficial, that they see, okay, we're bringing more content to audio description audiences. How wonderful that is. One of the challenges with that is that the blind audiences are put in this discriminatory position of saying, wait, you want me to have more or nothing? I'll take more, even though more may suck. Yeah. And the problem with that is no sighted person would ever put up with that. I've used the example before that, if Disney comes out with the next 5 Marvel films and they say, we're so excited to share the next 5 Marvel films over the next 2 years, we can only afford to really do 3 of them. So the last 2 are going to be drawn by stick figures in your 5th grade class, and it's going to be mixed by, and we just can't wait to share the story. We just can't afford to do it. Marvel audiences, the reaction.
They freak. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And our audiences, our AD audiences, are being put in that discriminatory position. So as we educate not just the powers that be, but also our audiences and also professionals who are both blind and sighted to understand the big scope of this. I'm still learning. Every day I'm learning more about audio description, and it's fascinating how little I know about it. Every step is a good step. So when it's headed in the right direction. So we're trying to make sure that as we clarify these roles, that we can start platforming different roles of who, and I'm using platform in the sense of like, giving a megaphone to some of these roles of, here's what a writer does. Oh, I had no idea all the decisions. I thought they just captured what's on screen. And it's like, well, yeah, they do, but it's kind of like a fully produced audiobook, and that involves a lot.
Well, let's talk about one of the steps in the right direction, because this is, in my mind, pretty profound, given what you just shared with me, and that is the Screen Actors Guild Awards just aired this past Sunday. And you recently re-aired a podcast interview you did with John Brockett, the executive producer of the SAG Awards, where he talked about the commitment for audio description to be part of the screeners. Screeners are the copies of the films that go out to the voting members, and how it became a requirement for AD to be included in this year's live broadcast. Was that an ADNA catalyst in making that happen? Was that something that you did with your alliance?
A few clarifications that this is now the second year That
I see. Okay.
I just want to be clear that this is not the first year that SAG has had audio description. We re-aired a podcast from last year. It's the second year that we've had the requirement, and it's the second year that a blind AD announcer was in the live show. So fascinating experience, because John Brockett, the producer of the SAG Awards, had conversations with the Performers with Disabilities Committee, a SAG committee that obviously is made up of performers who are disabled. And during the conversations, one of the comments was, we'll request that the screeners, the digital screeners, have AD. And the committee was very clear that that is not acceptable. It's got to be a requirement. And they made it a requirement. They found a way to do it. And it was communicated. One of the fascinating things was there was a lot of apprehension and, can we do this? Can we do this? And like, yeah, you can. It's doable. Back to that example, the 5 hours turnaround time for a full feature film to have audio description. It's possible. It's not possible, ideal. Yeah. Here's the great thing. SAG Awards has over 130,000 voting members. If I got that right, we'll have to double check SAG Awards go on the website. I'm pretty sure it's give or take 130,000 voting members. The fact that over 130,000 people that vote for this prestigious award were exposed or had the option to turn on audio description, as well as here's these submitters, someone who wants to win an award. Usually it's a studio that says, hey, we want to win a SAG award. That's going to help our film. For them to be told, well, you need to have audio description. The very first question you can imagine is, what's that? And now all of a sudden there's more exposure. So it was such a great win to be able to see that happen. I was involved in the conversations. I was not a decision maker. I was just a consultant. But to be able to witness those conversations, to be able to see how open and progressive that the entire SAG Awards team was to the performers with disabilities, and how thoughtfully the performers with disabilities approached SAG with clarity, with strategy, with absolute just professionalism, was so great to see. That's how it works. And that's what was so exciting about the SAG Awards.
And maybe that could be used as a template when approaching other companies and showing them, look, this is a live broadcast and it was done. And we had all these screeners and it was done. And the turnaround time and the amount of work, it can be done. And so maybe that is the template to serve as a kind of the example of, how to present people to how to do it. I thought about whether or not to ask you this next question.
Ooh, those are good ones.
Well, because it's a loaded one and we just celebrated a huge win. But since ChatGPT has launched this past November, we've heard about the term papers that high school and college students have created with the use of artificial intelligence chatbot and the counter technology that professors are trying to come up with so they can recognize the work of AI being used in these papers. There's also been plays, music, art that have used AI to create their content. And from what I understand, there was just a major piece of artwork sold that was completely AI created and an award that went to it. A lot of pushback from that. So are you concerned that AI will affect your work in audio description and the advocacy of the Alliance that you're doing?
Yeah, I'm going to jump around to 4 different points, and I'll keep them as brief as I can. I think I can be brief. The first
you don't have to be brief. It's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I want you to feel that you have as much time to talk about this as you do.
Great.
As you want to.
There's a website called Vocal Variants. That's NTS at the end, not CE. So Vocal Variant, plural, variants.com, I think. I think it's .com. It could be .org. But Vocal Variants has had tremendous success in including riders for voice talents to include when working on projects. There's a lot of protections that are in place for that. And at the same time, there's a lot of companies that have already added audio description with AI voices, the synth voice. Our audiences listen to synth voices all day on their screen reader devices. So iPhones or computers or Android devices, even Windows devices, all of them have a screen reader. So a sighted person checks their calendar and reads their email and checks the internet and browses. Same thing for blind people, except they hear stuff. And it's heard with basically a synth voice. And so at the end of the day, a blind person wants to sit down, enjoy some entertainment. They don't want to hear a synth voice. They don't want that because that reminds them of work. However, there is a space for audio description to have a synth voice, and those are for content that is informationally only. So, for example, just give me the facts, the details. Imagine a very important news video that comes out alerting people to the latest flood that's happening in Northern California. Audio description could be included in that clip very quickly and very efficiently because you don't need the human voice talent to add the story element or the intent behind it. That there's a lot of places for that. There's a company who has worked with identifying images within pictures. Apple has developed its own proprietary software that does that automatically, and that can be used as a augmentation to the AD writer to help them identify things, whether the writer is blind or sighted. That these are the kinds of things that can be useful. It's not all or nothing. You think about when Toy Story came out. Well, there goes the animation, hand-drawn animation. There's still hand-drawn animation. There's still opportunities for going to a concert and hearing a live band play live music, even though they may have a pre-recorded content behind it. So what's really interesting is and here's the next point. I'm making a very clear paragraph mark right now. Creating unique and memorable character voices is a skill that requires a great deal of creativity and imagination, as well as the ability to bring characters to life through voice. While AI can mimic human speech, it is less able to replicate the nuance and personality of a truly unique character voice. Audiobooks requires a great deal of emotional and expressive range, as well as the ability to interpret and convey the author's intent. While AI can generate speech, it is currently less able to convey the nuance and emotional depth required for a compelling audiobook narration. Similar to audiobooks, e-learning and instructional videos requires a voiceover artist to be engaged and informative and to convey complex ideas clearly and concisely. While AI can generate speech, it is still less able to provide the level of engagement and interactivity required for effective e-learning and instructional videos. Creating effective commercial voiceovers requires a combination of persuasive delivery, authenticity, and brand alignment. While AI can generate speech, it is currently less able to provide the level of personal connection and emotional appeal that is often required for effective commercial voiceovers. It's worth noting that the voiceover industry, like many others, is likely to evolve and change in the coming years as AI technology continues to advance. However, the skills listed above are likely to remain valuable for the foreseeable future.
To which I say amen.
You just said amen to a chat. Here's where the twist is. That was created from ChatGPT.
Really? Interesting.
Now, if you read through it, there's asterisks there. It's valuable for the foreseeable future. It's currently less able to provide the level of personal connection. So this is evolving super fast. There's some fascinating reads, and they still are kind of cold. There's still no heart. There's still no soul behind it, but it's getting there. And I think there's an argument to be made that programming AI is still with intent at this point, where it's at right now. It's still giving a disservice to our audiences, I believe. And it's still valuable because it's, there's places for it. But when it comes to context, I still am fascinated that without the music, without the context of what characters have said, I don't see how any voice talent, unless they're specifically directed for every single line in a 300Q 50-minute TV show, can be able to convey that without the context of having what's happening auditorially.
It's interesting when you were reading that, because I could tell that you were reading something, but I really felt that was almost your prepared response from when someone asks you about your advocacy work or your alliance work, of why that's important. And so I felt your passion behind it when you were reading it. And with any technology, there are pluses and there are negatives. So it's the application of what that technology is used for, where I think is it the inherent value of it. And so getting more on a personal level, Roy, when you're thinking about either where we are with technology and in regards to your work that you're doing in audio description, or maybe even something else, something that you faced in your career, are there times when you have faced doubt or fear? And if there's a particular skill set or faith that has pulled you through it?
I love this question. And I think this resonates with what you talk about with the theme of your podcast. That it's telling stories, that when it comes to stories, it's all about connection. And of course, I have periods of doubt more than daily. It's a part of growth, I think. And I feel like I've got a few skills that I've learned that help me as a human being on this earth that contribute to some of the challenges within this particular space. It is a support team, being able to have trusted alliances with people that have my back. And having my back isn't that they say yes to everything I do, but being able to trust them to say, hey, here's another perspective that you might not have thought about, and being able to receive that. I think that it's easy for me to get very, you've heard my passion, you understand the thing. I'm still a sighted person that's working in the field of audio description, which is primarily for blind and low vision people. And I am constantly reminding myself that I need to step back and give space for those voices. And that's imperative. I love jumpstarting these opportunities, but it's not about me jumpstarting it. It's about getting this going so that those professionals who are blind and those people who work in audio description, whether they are blind or sighted, can have a space to be able to talk about their joys and their successes. It's so satisfying. At the same time, I feel like one of the biggest challenges that I've had is the very tempting. This is going to be really nuanced. Can we get into it?
Absolutely.
Thank you. When we hear about do unto others as you would have them do unto you, that is so important. However, there's an assumption of that how I feel about things is how everybody else feels.
I will say amen again. Yes. Yes.
So with that, let's go back to listening. That if I'm bringing my assumptions of what a blind person is, or there's no way to stereotype all blind people. Every single blind person is their own person. The one common denominator is that usually sighted people get in the way. So as a sighted person, I want to be very cognizant that I have assumptions and I need to really be careful to listen. At the same time, I can't take that listening and take advantage of it. That taking advantage of the experience of a blind person and applying it without either crediting them or giving them the compensation, however that looks. When I teach audio description courses for voiceovers, I include professional blind talents to give feedback. That's part of the thing. There's some new ways that I'm applying that concept in the courses that I'm doing now that are empowering the participants, sighted or blind, to make sure that they're taking advantage of this opportunity. So it's not just me that's doing the hiring. There's all sorts of things here to open up the opportunities, but that is what it's meant to be. I'm sure your experience as a voice talent, that a lot of your successes have come through fellow voice talent, like male or female, other voice talents who have stumbled upon something or shared some gem of wisdom from a workshop that they took or some introduction to an agent.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
My entire career is not based on some opportunity through a producer. It was through a voice talent who introduced me to that producer. Or it was that voice talent that introduced me to the workout that got me to the skill level that was able for me to be able to deliver what that particular producer needed me to do. So that kind of network has been built in. That's my opportunity that I had. And if there's any way to expand that, to make sure that blind professionals also have those opportunities, that's been a barrier. There's been a lot of workouts where you're given a PDF online or a hand-drawn scribble on a sheet of paper back in the 10 years ago or whatever. That as things evolve, we need to be able to share text in a way that can be accessible. And it's not just for blind people. There's other disabilities that have access to this work. And it's making sure that those opportunities come. However, it's not based on what I, the sighted person, think. It's based on what the blind or the disabled person needs or wants and how they want it. And that accommodation is as simple as asking, how can I accommodate this workout for you, and make sure that that's heard and listened to. It's not my assumption. And that's something that, it's a fine line, and I'm still learning. And I'm thankful for, again, the support and the care that a lot of friends, both sighted and blind, have guided me through. And I got to say, I'm meditating now on a regular basis, and that has affected a lot of things for the positive. Different books that I'm reading, all these things have had a tremendous impact. And if I could boil all this together, the reason I love voiceover so much is getting into that flow state, that there's this experience of in audio description specifically, of dancing with the content, of being a part of it and doing this like cha-cha with the music and in between the lines of dialogue. There's this real satisfaction there that I kind of forget. And I'm not working in my brain. I'm working in my memory, the body memory, the voice memory. And that's something that's really satisfying. And how great that that's something that is happening, 8,800 times of all the other voice talents that are doing that. Let's share that with more. And with audio description narration, it's not just limited to that so many areas of voiceover can have that sense of flow. You've experienced it, right, Cheryl?
Yeah, and I love your metaphor about the dance because it is a dance. And when you mention about assumptions, it's much like the work that NGOs do when they go into a country to help a country. The good ones find out what do they need, not what can we bring you, but what are your needs? We might want to bring you clothes, but you might need just clean water. So to manage assumptions and also expectations of, well, hey, I'm giving this to you. Why aren't you happy about it? Well, you never asked me what I needed. So I love the fact that you have that heart of service and that's what you're bringing to your work. And one of the things I just said last night being on a webinar was that the voiceover industry is filled with some of the most gracious and helpful people I've met. I'm a former LA girl. I did on camera. In fact, I got my SAG card through doing on camera work. And I'm not saying on camera actors are not gracious and helpful, but it's different. I'll just say it's different. I have found that voice actors tend to just go out of their way to really help one another. And like you say, with referrals and what have you. So conversely about, fears and doubts and what have you, what gives you hope? What makes you hopeful?
One of the things that's really important is the collaboration between all aspects of audio description, whether it's the audience, the professionals that are blind or sighted, and the creators of audio description, as well as the creators of the content. The thing that excites me the most is being able to see that coalesce in a way where everyone's really supporting. It's not going to be the same. There's a lot of subjectivity. There's a lot of different approaches. Like I had said earlier, I'm not going to be everybody's favorite narrator. Somebody else might not like a certain other voice. There could be writing that just kind of gets under you for whatever reason. But there's also a lot of professionalism that there's certain things that do work. And being able to see that start to go in the direction that a lot of the pivot for audio description maybe about 10, 15 years ago was, hey, everybody, let's look how cheap we can make this so we can make more of it. One of my intention is to stop that and make it a chase for how great audio description can be.
Yes.
And that's what the ADNA does. That's what the podcasts do, showing some behind the scenes, different perspectives. People contradict themselves on the ADNA podcast. One podcast person might say one thing, somebody else might say something completely different. They're both right. That's exciting. But it's showing the professionalism. It's showing the work that goes into it. And it's really exciting to be able to stand back and open that up. I mean, I've been yakking your ear off the whole time. This has been built up for 150 some episodes where I've interviewed AD professionals because I'm just like, and then what happened? And it's like, so I'm like yakking your ear off. But that's the joy to be able to see that happen. I'm not sure if I've answered your question.
You just answered my next question, actually, is what brings you joy? And you answered it, unless there's something else you want to add to that too. But yak away. I mean, this is so interesting when I have a guest who joins me and talks. It's like, you're the dream guest because I ask you a question, you answer it. There's probably been only one time that I had someone who was, and I think you'll get this reference, a Michigan J Frog, where I've asked them a question and it's like, rabbit. So what does bring you joy, Roy Samuelson?
I've got something here. Let me see if I can put it into words because a lot of this is experiential. So I'm going to do a Michigan J Frog for like 3 seconds here. You can cut this.
Okay.
Okay. So I know the irony. The irony is not lost.
I got it. Okay.
The irony is not lost.
I got it. All right. It took me a moment. I'm like expecting to hear it. And then I went, oh, that's it. Yes.
So I want to talk about the Television Academy. On the Television Academy, that's the place where people vote for the Emmys. I was on the Performers Peer Group Executive Committee for close to, I think it was 6 years. For those 6 years, I was advocating for AD narrators to be able to qualify to join. to be able to use their AD credits to join the TV Academy. I saw the opportunity there. I saw the exposure that could bring, and I saw the elevation that could bring for all AD narrators to be able to use that. And being a part of the Performers Peer Group Executive Committee, it's a fancy title, but it's basically we help make decisions for the peer group that is the performers, as opposed to the producers or the directors or the commercial, whatever. So the first time I finally got the opportunity to speak to this particular committee, I prepared, I had all my talking points down, did the research. It was like a 10-minute talk and I was all set. And here's how I was introduced by the governor. Roy Samuelson's really passionate about audio description. He's been working at this for a long time. We can't do anything with what he's about to ask for. There's nothing that we can do, but it really is important to him. So if you could just listen to him and give him your attention, that'd be great.
What?
It's a happy ending. So
okay, good.
Devastating to be able to present that. It was, with that kind of setup, it was just a deflated
Where are
balloon.
you going to go? Yeah, absolutely.
1 year later, 365 days later, ish. Not going to give it exact 365, but a year later, same meeting, same exact talk with a few little changes. I was introduced by the exact same person. We've made headway in membership. We've made headway with the executive board, and everyone is ready for this to be approved. There is no reason for you to say no to this. This can happen. We're set. We've got the language ready. It's ready to be put in the book that audio description narrators can now qualify for the TV Academy. Roy's going to share why it's important. I gave the exact same speech.
Beautiful.
It's timing. And the best part is that people can use the AD&A credits to qualify to join the TV Academy.
Yes.
So you can see the opportunities that this creates. That, yes, I can see in your brain all the opportunities that are now happening of everything that we've talked about for the last 50 minutes or hour, that all these things can now open up that one extra place that was that one extra obstacle that was keeping blind or disabled people from being a part of being at a table where a lot of decisions are being made. This feels like a victory.
There's a lot of amens in this podcast. I'm going to give you a third one.
I'm ready for it.
Amen. Roy, if there was a soundtrack to your life, what would be on it and why?
I'm screening out all the foul language songs right now. Because there's some really good ones that just get me going in a really good way, and they're very exciting and positive.
Not the answer.
It's not what you're aiming for. There's an album. It's called Breathe, and it just came out recently. Chad Lawson, Breathe, and it's just. He's a pianist. He's got some background stuff, and there's something about it that it just calms my mind. It releases so much stress, and it's something that I've listened to it several times, and I think it was 2 or 3 times ago where I listened to it and I just burst into tears. It was it just tapped into something. And what I love about it is that it opens up my heart, and anything that can bring that feeling of awe, AWE, and how that brings wonder. I think that's really close to that feeling of the flow state. And that's what I love about audio description too, that it just charges something up. There's a beautiful animated short on Apple TV Plus that's called The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. Oh, okay.
Beautiful.
There we go.
So lovely. So lovely.
So that feeling is what I get through this album.
Well, I will have to check it out
Chad
because
Lawson.
that was a great endorsement. And if the analogy or the comparison is to that short film, which was just exquisite, it brought tears to mine and my husband's eyes when we watched it. We're just like, what mushes?
Without spoiler alert, you and I both know what we want to be when we grow up.
Yes, and I will say there's no endorsement obviously, but I will shamelessly plug the content that Apple is doing because it's fantastic. There's some really good programs on Apple right now. So in closing, Roy, this has been delightful. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. I'm so appreciative of your time, because just go back and listen to your intro and you'll know why I'm like, you're taking time to talk with moi. If folks could get a hold of you for coaching or production services you offer and any other work you want to talk about, how do they do that? And I'll have that in the show notes as well.
Sure. If you're interested in audio description and you're on Facebook, you don't have to register. There's a group called Audio Description Discussion. It's got over 3,000 different people that are contributing thoughts and ideas. It's very lively conversations. Not everybody agrees, and I love that it is a discussion. So Audio Description Discussion. The ADNA.org, that's THEADNA, the ADNA.org. That's got the podcast episodes. But I'd also strongly recommend that people listen to all your episodes at least twice before starting to listen to mine. There's also the credit list. So if you listen to Audio Description and you hear a voice and you want to contribute that voice, it's crowdsourced. Or if you are curious who voiced something, there's a chance that you could type in that title at theadna.org and get it. For me, I've got a website that is in the midst of being revamped. But it's roysamuelson.com. That's RoySamuelson.com. And there's a mailing list where I send out the occasional training and coaching and other stuff.
And this new website will have pictures of your hot Nashville hair, yes?
Oh, see? Yes. So it's I did get a haircut. I've got new headshots coming. So what I'm hoping to do is hire somebody to write out the description of the image and see what they come up with. But I like yours.
Speaking of description, do you want to take us out with a little Roy Samuelson audio description?
Oh, see, and that's the funny part because I just read the scripts. But osmosis, let's see what I can do. So staring at a screen that has way too many tabs and folders and documents open. Roy Samuelson speaks into a microphone pop filter wearing a T-shirt that says Camarillo. It's kind of wrinkled and crosses his legs on a roly-poly chair in front of a desk with Apple device with a trackpad and one of those coasters that soaks up water.
I love the roly-poly.
I'm literally roly-polying as I'm saying roly-poly.
Thank you so much, Roy Samuelson, for joining me here today. This has been delightful, and I look forward to more conversations. We'll have to reconnect again. And anytime that you want to join me and have something else that you want to share, feel free to reach out, and we'll do part 2.
Thanks so much for letting me share my story.
You're so welcome. I'd also like to thank the following news outlets for the use of their clips in so aptly painting the picture of the fear that we're facing during this pandemic. BBC, PBS, Now This, UNESCO, and Some Good News. I especially want to thank Joel and Luke Smallbone, otherwise known as the group for King and Country, for allowing me to use an excerpt of their song Together, which could not be a more hopeful and inspiring song for such a time as this. Finally, I'll leave you with the following from Proverbs 23:18. Surely there is a future, and your hope will not be cut off. Thank you again for joining me today. Feel free to offer feedback or a story idea at 19stories@soundsatchelstudios.com, via Instagram at Cheryl HollingVO. I look forward to sharing more stories on the next episode of 19 Stories from Fear to Hope. Until then, stay healthy and hopeful.
Together with our differences, together we are bolder, braver, stronger.